The fun never stops with Hegel. This is part 2 of The Beautiful Soul, and it's another Christmas special. I mean, what more do I have to do? Right, take this off. Okay, so Beautiful Soul. Thomas Hobbes, very miserable guy. He explained the mystery of human nature by separating the church from science and reason. He thought that human reason alone explained the working of the world. Okay, so he thought you could apply the principles of mathematics to social problems. You could reduce everything to atoms and then work upwards from there. He says, when a man reasoneth, he does nothing else but conceive a sum total from addition of parcels, or conceive a remainder from a subtraction of one sum from another. For reason, in this sense, is nothing but reckoning. So he thought that humans in their natural state were in that condition which is called war. And such a war is as of every man against every man. So basically, we're born bad, and geometry proves this. And it can't make us good, but it can make us get on. Everything is cause and effect. Good and evil, Hobbes argued, are entirely a byproduct of the way that we organise society. So the notions of right and wrong, this is what he says, justice and injustice have no place. Where there is no common power, there is no law. Where no law, no justice, no injustice. Justice and injustice are none of the faculties, neither of the body nor mind. They are qualities that relate to men in society, not in solitude. Okay, so he has a little bit of a point, but let's move on. If human action is nothing more than rational self-interest, his solution wasn't the Christian promise of an afterlife, but a powerful overbearing state. Now, a group of people called the Cambridge Platonists, who came just after Hobbes, they rejected this materialist philosophy, you know, of like we're just atoms, add it all up and you'll work it out. They thought that we could know the world by means of intuition as well as our senses. Human virtue was something that we could find in everyone. And post Thomas Hobbes, these debates indicated that the grounds upon which religion defended moral behaviour, it was starting to shift from just blind faith in religion to the use of reason to justify religion. So justification for acting in a moral way, it began to move from, you know, a priest telling you a religious reason because it's good, follow the 10 Commandments, to a non-religious and a more logical and ethically consistent standpoint. So God was still there, but he was moving further into the background. Reason justified faith, and faith justified reason. So if I've got to think about why of the 10 Commandments, then why should I blindly do the right thing when doing the wrong thing might be more practical and give you better results? So in 1690, John Locke added to the debate in his essay concerning human understanding. He tried to link religion with the scientific method. His main thesis was that people are not born with a set of innate principles. Locke wrote, if we attentively consider newborn children, by degrees ideas come into their minds and they get no more nor no other than what experience and the observation of things that come in their way. Locke's position was that good and evil can be boiled down to pleasure and pain, or carrot and stick. He suggested that good ethical behaviour was grounded in a law-like structure that ultimately derived from God. So it's still all about God and maths though. He thought that all social phenomena could be discovered using mathematical laws, and that by using our senses and reflecting upon what we've learned, we just add simple ideas together to get a more and more complex and complete view of the world around us. Now that is actually he's sort of like a primitive Lenin, isn't he? But behind these laws, there has to be some ultimate legislator, and this is where he differs from Lenin, of course, and that was God. So abstract laws certainly existed for Locke, but there was a supreme being who wrote these laws. So our role was to rationally discover or work out these laws to determine which ones corresponded with God's lawmaking creation. So this is called a deist view. Deism generally rejects revelation. Reason and our senses can discover God's purpose in the universe. So God created the universe, but he doesn't intervene in his creation. This view is also known as the clockwork universe theory. Someone like Isaac Newton would subscribe to this view. Locke, however, allowed the God of the Bible to creep back in, because he thought that ordinary people needed a moral carrot and stick to do the right thing, because despite the glory of the clockmaker God, many people just didn't have the mental equipment to understand the complex underlying rationality of the universe. He also thought that rational proofs alone couldn't sustain virtuous behaviour. The peasants, therefore, couldn't be saved by reason, maths and logic. They couldn't do without a lot of straightforward Christian old-time religion. So essentially, be good or you'll go to hell. So it's amazing how, by the way, this is just an aside, it's amazing how often thinkers fall out with each other. So, some of the great examples are Stalin killed Lenin, Aristotle and Plato disagreed. There's a great picture, Raphael's painting features Plato holding a book, the Timaeus, and he's pointing to the heavens, and Aristotle signals down towards the earth. He's holding a copy of his Ethics. So, in history, close people get to hate each other. So Locke's adversary was a student. Furthermore, Locke, his antagonist, was hired help, Locke, for Anthony Ashley Cooper, who, great name by the way, Anthony Ashley Cooper. I wish my mum would have called me that. He was the third Earl of Shaftesbury, and he's famous for the third Earl of Shaftesbury. So Shaftesbury believed that moral judgment is something that is an inherently intellectual quality. So he says this: to love the public, to study universal good, and to promote the interest of the whole world as far as lies within our power is surely the height of goodness. We can self-educate ourselves, basically, to transform ourselves into something virtuous. To use a good it's an old-fashioned 18th century word, isn't that virtuous? It's gone out of fashion. Having said that, it sort of has returned, because now if you're like on a TV program and you do something wrong, it's like, oh, you're virtuous and you've got to go. I mean, it's probably a good idea. So virtue, we don't call it virtue, we call it inappropriate behaviour. So in the 18th century, they called it virtue. Anyway, so but basically it means that we can work hard on our characters to become morally beautiful. So we can set an example for others to follow, and others with similar characters will be attracted to us and learn from us. Morality and virtue, therefore, for Shaftesbury would no longer have to be the preserve of religion. It could henceforth be the role of the self perfecting itself. So according to Shaftesbury, virtue and beauty are closely linked and were understood as higher pleasures, appreciated by the mind, not there south of the border. So there is not, I presume, says Shaftesbury, the least degree of certainty wanting in what has been said concerning the preferableness of the mental pleasures to the sensual. To become a virtuous soul like Shaftesbury, you'd almost certainly need a nanny, and you'd need a series of tutors, and you'd need a lot of money, and you'd need to raise yourself to a level of aesthetic and moral perfection, and really that doesn't come cheap. Shaftesbury was a philosopher for the well-to-do nobility of England. He was well-meaning and well-to-do. Locke, on the other hand, even with his contradictions, understood that any moral theory would have to apply to the masses and not just British or the aristocracy. So he had a straightforward rewards and punishment theory. That could include the commoners as well as the aristocrats. And said that even Shaftesbury had a kind of, he couldn't do without the threat of hurting people, of being a punishment. So he said, the mere vulgar of mankind, this is Shaftesbury, stand in need of such a rectifying object as the gallows before their eyes. So even Shaftesbury had a grim view of human nature, all said and done. So a liberal education, therefore, kept you from the scaffold. And if Shaftesbury thought that an education in philosophical reasoning, that was the means to know the truth, and that was the way to create a morally beautiful person, in Germany, Protestant pietism showed another religious path to the same goal. So pietism was a revolution within the Reformation. It was about getting back to basics. It originated in the 17th century Germany. I think Germany, maybe Czech Republic. Its founder was Philip Spener, a Lutheran theologian. And he believed in a personal transformation through a spiritual renewal. Pietists understand that evil, immorality and pain exist in the world, and they saw it as their duty to change this by performing acts of goodness, charity and mercy for the less fortunate. They couldn't change the world though and do good deeds without first of all changing themselves. Their journey therefore was a personal reformation. They had to change their relationship with God before they could help others. So pietists built schools and hospitals at great expense, and clearly they were like a lovely bunch of people. Stern, but lovely. I mean, I visited it's a very late Moravian pietist village in Northern Ireland, and its name escapes me. But it was recently given UNESCO World Heritage status, and it's gorgeous. It's got a classroom. You can see this concept of perfecting yourself, moral strength, gravitas and so on. There's classrooms there and everything. You can go and have a look. It's brilliant. So the pietists wanted to return to what they believed to be the real meaning of the Reformation. They saw this creeping Catholicism returning in the shape of things like church decoration and ritual, and they wanted to return the church back to its essence. So what was the essence of Protestantism, they thought? Well, according to the pietists, it was about the individual's relationship to God. It was about sincere inward religious experience rather than outward performativity. So church art was simply a distraction, and it threatened to obscure one's individual and inwardly experienced relationship with God. Pietism was about the transformation of the individual, and its results would be a better world. Hallelujah. So this also meant it was a return to the close reading of the Bible. Pietists didn't like decoration for its own sake because this was a form of personal vanity, and some argue actually that early Christianity had a difficult relationship with the idea of beauty. So Robert E. Norton, in his great book on the beautiful soul, said there was a deep suspicion of beauty in early Christianity, and early theologians of the church associated transient beauty, physical beauty, with death and corruption. I kind of disagree with this because the Jewish prohibition of images, that did influence, no question, early Christianity, but less powerfully than is commonly thought. So if you look at the catacombs of St. Calixtus, he was one of the early popes of Rome, and he's a former slave as well, 190 to 200 BC, CE. There's loads of really beautiful images. I mean, they are like, the fish, Jesus, and they're faded, but clearly they spent a lot of time creating these images. And a group of Roman Christians created paintings for these walls and ceilings in an underground burial chamber. So it's contradictory, it's not straightforward. So there's a book called The Invisible God, the early Christians on art. Paul Corby Finney says, despite the prolixity of men like Clement and Tertullian, and they were both church fathers, by the way, they exhibit a strong puritanical streak, no question. But the presumption that this is carried over into real life, for example, that they insisted on frequenting places of worship which look like Quaker meeting houses, cannot be justified. Yeah, so it's not strictly true that I agree with him. So pietism rejection of the image may therefore not have been an early Christian creation or an origin. It reflects more early Christian values, but it's a more modern phenomenon, and it's related to selfhood, because pietism required truth and authenticity, and it condemned insincerity. This beauty of the soul is an internal beauty. Holiness without inner purity of the heart is nothing but hypocrisy. So these themes are powerful in pietism. So it's something different to early Christianity. Striving for perfection means striving for a beautiful soul. And German Romantic philosophers came overwhelmingly from pietist and staunchly Protestant families. Moving on to the idea of beauty and the first real incarnation of the beautiful soul in popular literature, in the Enlightenment area, we've got Rousseau. Rousseau thought we were born good and returned bad by society. So his book, Julie, or The New Eloise, is supposed to be a moral journey. And in this book, we first hear the phrase, I think it's this book, the beautiful soul. I think it's its most popular rendering of the book. So one reading of the book is that the secret love affair between there's someone called Julie Detange. She's from the Swiss nobility. And she falls in love with a lower class guy called Sam Preux. A man, he's hired to be her tutor, but instead he falls in love. So this is the story of a fallen heroine who redeems herself through devoting herself to a new life with her husband, Monsieur de Volmar. I've spoiled the book for you there. They then create a beautiful ideal world at their large estate at Clarens. Saint-Preux falls for Julie in the first place because she is a beautiful soul, a belle âme. Saint-Preux says, I know all your beautiful soul treasures. Julie writes back, I asked heaven to unite me, not with a likeable man, but rather with a man with a beautiful soul. Milord Edward Bomston, he's a friend of Saint-Preux, so he too is a beautiful soul. Julie writes to him as well, praising him as a beautiful soul. Milord Edward describes Julie and Saint-Preux as beautiful souls. She's beautiful, he's beautiful, everyone in the book's a beautiful soul. Okay, so the novel's good and it's beautiful, beautiful souls everywhere. Okay, so what is Rousseau getting at with this beautiful souls thing when they seem to be everywhere? So Julie and Saint-Preux aren't really Rousseau's role models for us. Instead, it's the aristocratic estate of Julie's husband, Volmar. And he seems to represent Rousseau's ideal society. Volmar, Julie and their servants are happy at Clarens. Clarens, it's the counterpoint to the evils of modern civilization. So probably Rousseau had Paris in mind as being like a pit of iniquity. In the same way that the pietists believed in sincerity and hated putting on an act, Rousseau thought of himself as an honest crusader, attacking the blatant hypocrisy of French society. The monarchy, the church, and French society itself were awful paradigms of flattery and insincerity. Rousseau himself, he saw himself as someone whose role it was to reveal their inner truth, the authentic behind the flattery and the falsity of ritual. So the Catholic Church, knowing that authenticity was not compatible with the church, they banned his book because they knew it was a dig at them. So Saint-Preux, though, travels through the world. He splits with Julie. And he's trying to lose this inner destructive emotional state. And he eventually returns to Clarens years later, where he meets Monsieur de Volmar and his wife, his former sweetheart, Julie. Now, Volmar seems fine with them all meeting up. You know, it's like a Swedish family. For Volmar, there's no possibility of a life hiding behind a lie, and he wants all personal relationships to be transparent. He says, the first step towards vice is to shroud innocent actions in mystery, and whoever likes to conceal something, sooner or later has reason to conceal it. And Volmar explains that in Clarens, everyone is perfectly honest with everyone else. Now, no one lies. It's a bit like, there's a great one in Everyone Loves Raymond, where Raymond's wife says to him, why are you lying? And he goes, I'm not lying, it's just my way. So I think it's totally unrealistic, because imagine the darling, oh, you look wonderful in that dress tonight, and it looks a mess. You know, you've got to lie half the time, haven't you? You've got to, like, what am I going to say? You can't, like, you know, tell kids, oh yeah, you're going to die when you're in the 80s. So some say Father Christmas. So obviously this was Rousseau's ideal. Okay, so moving forward. Nobody hides secrets, by the way, in Clarens. And it's a sort of rural university designed to produce beautiful souls. And Rousseau seems to be unaware that Clarens was the opposite of a model of beautiful souls. It's a place of manipulation and deception, because there's no real freedom there, as it's a benevolent autocracy. Everyone knows their place in the social hierarchy. So it's a community of beautiful souls that Rousseau created as a model for us to follow. But these type of perfect societies are impossible to follow. They're impossible to sustain for long. Crystalline pure societies whose radiance will illuminate the darkness and the ignorance of the world, it's for the birds. It's about making yourself pure and the rest will follow. Make the community pure and radiate. If you make your section of the society pure, There's an idea that, it's a pinnacle of goodness. So this concept, this is where I get controversial. So this concept, it's a prototype for the 2024 student encampments on Palestine. Now, I'm forgetting, it's not about the politics. You can disagree with the politics. You can take the view of son of Hamas who says, oh, it's all kids playing. Or you can take the view of the leaders of the students' encampments. It's not about the politics. It's about the design of the encampments. It's about sealed communities. It's also about safe spaces. The safe spaces. So these were it was a safe space. Clauron and Rousseau created the first safe space. So it's not about the politics. It's about the architecture of the safe space and the concept of a safe space and the concept of purity. And can we have purity in an impure society? Which we can't, but that's not the point. The point is not about the politics. It's about the psychology. Okay, so next time, The Beautiful Soul, and on that bombshell, Nazi race theory. How the beautiful soul is linked to Nazi race theory. See you later.